The blood hadn't dried on her resume yet. That's how fast everything fell apart. Ivy had spent 11 months building the Harmon Group's Eastern portfolio from a spreadsheet in a borrowed office with no windows and a space heater that cut out every 40 minutes. 11 months of cross-referencing acquisition files, flagging discrepancies nobody asked her to flag, and eating lunch at her desk because she didn't want to miss anything. The kind of work that made your eyes go dry by 2 in the afternoon. The kind of work most people called invisible. She called it hers. The Thursday it ended, she found out the same way she found out most things at the Harmon Group. By accident. She'd gone back to retrieve her cardigan and heard her name through a door that wasn't quite shut. Ivy Marsh, her supervisor's voice. Felicity. Warm, measured Felicity who brought in muffins on Mondays. She's been flagging the Northgate numbers for weeks, then reassign her. A voice Ivy didn't recognize, male, flat. And the files she's already touched. A pause. Bury them. Credit the audit to Delacroix's team. Ivy stood in the hallway with her cardigan balled in her fist for what felt like a very long time. She had a choice. She could walk in. She could say something. She had the documentation, 3 months of it, time-stamped, backed up to a personal drive, because she'd learned early that shared servers had a way of losing things. She could make noise. She thought about the student loan balance she checked every morning like a wound. The sublet she was already a month behind on. The fact that her references were all people who reported to Felicity. She walked out of the building, not slowly, not dramatically. Just walked, the way you walk when your body is already 1 step ahead of your brain. It was 8 degrees and raining the particular fine rain that soaks you through before you realize it's happening. She walked for a while anyway. She ended up at the kind of bar that doesn't have a sign out front. Underground. In the financial district, the sort of place where business gets done after business hours, which she'd always found slightly exhausting and now found simply appropriate. She ordered rye, neat, which she didn't actually like, but there are evenings that call for things you don't like. The bar was mostly empty. A few suits scattered at tables. A man at the far end of the bar who was not drinking, just sitting looking at nothing. She noted him the way you note a structural column, present, load-bearing, irrelevant to her immediate situation. She spread her laptop on the bar because she had nowhere to be and the files were right there, and she was, if nothing else, thorough. She pulled up the Northgate data. Scrolled through numbers she'd already memorized. The pattern was still there, obvious as a fracture. She was staring at a flagged cell when she heard the sound. Not loud. A soft, specific sound, the weight of something solid making contact. Then footsteps, quick, moving past her toward the exit. She turned. The man at the end of the bar had not moved, but there was now a phone on the bar in front of her. A phone that wasn't hers. She looked at it, looked at him. He was watching the door the footsteps had gone through. "That's not mine," Ivy said. "I know." He looked at her then, grey eyes, the kind of face that didn't waste expressions. "Don't touch it." She left it alone for about 30 seconds. "What's on it?" "Nothing that concerns you. Then why is it on my bar?" He looked at her like the phrase, "my bar," was interesting to him. Not amused. Just interested, the way you're interested in something that's slightly off from what you expected. "Someone left it," he said. "Deliberately. For you, for me, and you don't want it." "I want to know who sent it before I decide what I want." Ivy looked at the phone, looked at her screen. The Northgate numbers, the flagged cells. The audit that was going to be credited to Delacroix's team while she ate the collateral damage. She was very tired, she said. "Who sent it? If there's metadata attached to the transfer, or a network tag in the file structure, or..." She paused. "You didn't ask." He hadn't moved, hadn't changed his expression, but he was looking at her differently now. "Cataloging. How long?" he said. "Depends what's on it. 20 minutes if it's sloppy, longer if it isn't." He pushed the phone 1 centimeter toward her. His name, she found out later, was Varro. Just Varro. The way you have just Varro when the rest of the name is information too many people have already used against you. She found the metadata in 14 minutes. Not because she was showing off, though she would admit, privately, there was some of that, but because whoever had sent it was sloppy in the specific way that people are sloppy when they think they're untouchable. The kind of sloppy that leaves fingerprints in clean rooms. She laid it out for him on a napkin, the originating network node, the timestamp discrepancy that put the transfer 12 minutes before the supposed time of sending, the device fingerprint that matched a model registered to a shell company incorporated in Manitoba 6 months ago. She slid the napkin across. He read it without picking it up, read it again, then looked at her. "You do this for work," he said. Ivy said, past tense as of about 90 minutes ago. He didn't ask. She told him anyway because the rye was doing something to her editorial instincts. The Harmon Group, the Northgate Files, 11 months, Felicity and her Monday muffins, and the voice she'd heard through a door that wasn't quite shut. He listened. He didn't say anything like "I'm sorry" or "that's awful" or any of the things people say when they haven't actually heard you. He just listened. "How much do they owe you?" he said when she was done. Not a question, just a request for a number. Ivy blinked. "In what sense?" "Back pay, severance you won't receive, damages if you wanted to make a case." She'd done the math, actually. The night before, when she hadn't been able to sleep, she'd opened a spreadsheet and done the math the way she always did when she was anxious. By converting the anxiety into numbers, which were at least tractable. She gave him the number. He took out his own phone and typed something. "Put it away. That'll be transferred to your account by morning," he said, "in exchange for what you did tonight." Ivy stared at him. That's 4 times what I calculated. The extra is for discretion. I don't even know what I'd be discreet about." "Exactly," Varro said. "That's what the extra is for." She should have left then. She knew it. The kind of knowing that sits in your stomach before your brain has finished the argument. You take the money, you leave. You never think about the phone or the man or the Manitoba Shell Company again. She was almost off the stool when 2 men came down the stairs. The bar went quiet in the way bars go quiet when something with weight walks into them. The bartender found something to do at the other end. The suits at the tables didn't look up, which meant they'd already looked up and decided not to. The men walked straight toward Varro. They didn't look at Ivy at all. That was their mistake. She knew it was a mistake because she'd spent 11 months being the person no one looked at, and she'd learned exactly how much you can see from that position. The one on the left had his right hand inside his jacket. The one on the right was watching Varro's hands, not his face, which meant he'd done this before and knew to watch the hands. She thought about all of this in approximately 1.5 seconds. Then she picked up her laptop and dropped it. It was a solid machine. It hit the floor with a crack like a gunshot. Everyone moved. In the movement, the instinctive flinch, the half-second of reoriented attention, Varro was off the stool. She didn't see exactly what he did because she was looking at her laptop, which had survived, but was now displaying a very distressed desktop. But when she looked up, the man on the left was on the floor, and the man on the right was being held very still against the bar. Varro looked at her. "You could have left," he said. Ivy said, "Why didn't you?" She looked at her laptop, the distressed desktop, the Northgate files still open in a tab. 11 months of invisible work. "I've been leaving all day," she said. "I ran out." He held her gaze for a moment. Something moved through his expression, not warmth, exactly. Something more like the recalibration of an estimate. "Come with me," he said. "I don't know who you are." "No, but you know who sent that phone. And you know who built that shell company. And in approximately 40 minutes, the people who own both of those things are going to know that someone was in this bar tonight who could read their fingerprints." Ivy looked at the man still against the bar. He was very deliberately not looking at her face. "How much danger am I in?" she said. "Enough," Varro said. "Come." She picked up her laptop, followed him. The car was waiting, black obviously. She'd have been disappointed by anything else. She got in because the alternative was standing on a wet street in the financial district in the middle of the night with a broken laptop and a Northgate file and someone's fingerprints in her head. Not a tremendous set of options. Varro got in beside her. The car moved. "Where are we going?" Ivy said. "Somewhere safe. Safe for whom?" He looked at her. The streetlights moved across his face at intervals, and she catalogued him the same way she'd been catalogued. The lines around his eyes, the scar along his jaw that had healed badly, the way he held himself like a man who'd stopped finding most things surprising. 40, maybe. 42, the kind of age that isn't just years. You ask a lot of questions, he said. I work with data, Ivy said. Questions are how I worked with data. Apparently past tense is contagious. Something almost happened to his mouth. Not a smile. The precondition of one, maybe. Varro, he said. Ivy, she said. Ivy Marsh. Since we're apparently doing this. I know, he said. You told the bartender when you ordered. You were listening. I listened to everything, he said. It wasn't a boast, just a fact, delivered the way you deliver facts about the weather. The building they arrived at was glass and steel, downtown, the kind of building that doesn't have a lobby so much as a statement. She followed him to a floor that required a key, that was also a card, that was also apparently a biometric scan, and into a space that was all high ceilings and low light and the specific kind of quiet that money makes. There was a woman there, mid-30s, hair pulled back, the expression of someone who had been waiting and was professionally unimpressed by the fact. Renner, Varro said. The situation at the Alcott is contained, Renner said, but Whitmore's people are already moving. We have maybe 6 hours before they triangulate the bar. They'll find it empty. They'll find the glass, Renner said. She looked at Ivy. And now they'll find her. She's staying, Varro said. Renner looked at Ivy with the kind of look that is not unkind, but is also not warm. An assessment. For how long until I decide otherwise? Ivy thought this was probably the moment to object. To point out that she had not agreed to staying anywhere, that the original agreement had been somewhere safe, that she was a person with a sublet and a student loan and a very upset laptop, and that indefinite wasn't actually a duration. She looked at Renner's expression. She looked at Varro's. She sat down on the nearest chair instead and opened her damaged laptop to see what was salvageable. There are 2 possibilities, she said, to nobody in particular, because she processed things out loud when she was tired, and she was very tired. Either Whitmore's people recognize me from tonight and come looking, in which case I need to be somewhere they can't find me, or they don't, in which case I should still probably not go home for a few days. Either way, she looked at Varro. Do you have a guest room, or is this going to be a couch situation? Renner made a sound that might have been something. Varro said, There's a room, okay, Ivy said, and I'll want access to your network in the morning. The shell company structure has more layers. It'll take time, but I can map the full ownership chain if you want to know who Whitmore is actually answering to. You don't need to do that, Varro said. No, Ivy agreed, but I have the data already in my head and I'm going to think about it anyway, so I might as well make it useful. She looked at him. Unless your operation is the kind that doesn't want a paper trail of its paper trail investigations. My operation, Varro said quietly, is the kind that is not usually described out loud by people who have known it existed for less than 3 hours. I'll take that as a yes to the network access, Ivy said. The room was not a couch situation. It was clean and spare, a large window looking onto the city, blackout curtains she didn't close because she wanted to see the lights. She sat on the bed with her laptop and the Northgate files, and thought about what she knew, which was more than she'd known at 8 o'clock that morning, and substantially different. She thought about Felicity and the muffins and the voice through the not-quite-shut door. She thought about 11 months. She thought about the number Varro had sent her, sitting in her account by morning, 4 times what she'd calculated, and what that said about the kind of math he did. She fell asleep with the spreadsheet open. She woke to coffee, not delivered, made in a kitchen she found by following the smell, which led her down a hallway to a room that was mostly window and morning light. Varro was there. He'd apparently been there a while. There were papers on the table and the specific stillness of a person who'd been thinking rather than sleeping. He said nothing about the fact that she was in a borrowed shirt and had a spreadsheet formula still visible on her screensaver. She poured coffee, sat across from him. The shell company, she said, is a third-layer vehicle. The actual owner is buried under 2 more incorporations in Alberta and a numbered company in Nova Scotia. But the beneficial ownership declaration they filed in 2021 has a signatory whose name appears twice in the Northgate files, which means whoever is running Whitmore is also connected to whatever Harmon Group was trying to bury. Varro set down his papers. He looked at her the way she'd looked at the Northgate discrepancy the first time she'd spotted it, the way you look at a thing that changes the shape of the problem. "Say that again," he said. She said it again, more slowly. She turned her laptop around and showed him the cell, the name, the timestamp discrepancy that put the same person in 2 places in the financial chain. He looked at it for a long time. "You found this last night," he said. "This morning, 3:40. I couldn't sleep. And you're certain?" "The math doesn't lie," Ivy said. "People lie. Numbers just sit there and tell you what happened." Something shifted. She didn't have a word for it. Not warmth, still, but the removal of a wall. The sense of a space opening up between where he'd been and where he was now. "The name in the Northgate file," he said. "Say it." She said it. He was still for a full 5 seconds, which, she was learning, was the equivalent of someone else's entire emotional range. "That," he said, "is the person I've been looking for 4 years." Ivy absorbed this. "And I just handed him to you?" "You handed me a thread," Varro said. "A thread I can pull, so what happens now?" He looked at her. "What do you want to happen?" Nobody had asked her that. Not in 11 months. Not when she'd been handed the wrong files, given the wrong desk, had her audit buried under someone else's name. Not when she'd walked out of the building with her cardigan and her silence and the rain coming down fine and persistent. "What do you want?" "I want Delacroix's name off my audit," she said. "I want the Northgate discrepancy on record under mine. I want Felicity to have to explain herself to someone who isn't also protecting her." She paused. "And I want the 4 months of unpaid overtime I documented on a spreadsheet that now belongs to an HR server I no longer have access to." Varro considered this like a man reviewing terms. "The first 3 I can arrange," he said. "The 4th. He paused. "Do you have a copy of the spreadsheet?" "I have backups of everything," Ivy said. "I've been making backups since my 2nd week. I learned early." "Then the 4th, Varro said, "is also manageable. You make it sound very transactional." "Everything is transactional," he said. "The question is whether both parties leave the table with what they came for." Ivy looked at her coffee. "What did you come for?" "The name," he said. "And now you have it, and now I have it, so the transaction is complete." "In theory," Varro said. She waited. "In practice," he said, "the name is only useful if I can trace the chain. And the chain requires someone who understands the financial architecture well enough to follow it without destroying it in the process." He met her gaze. "That's a different kind of work than what I have available to me." "You're offering me a job," Ivy said. "I'm offering you a problem," he said. "One that is specifically shaped like your skill set. That's a very particular way to recruit someone. I find it more honest than alternatives." She thought about it. The sublet, and the loan, and the very upset laptop, and the version of her life that had been quietly dismantled by people who'd known she wouldn't make noise. The version where she ate lunch at her desk and made backups nobody asked for and found discrepancies in audits that got credited to someone else. She thought about the number in her account. 4 times what she'd calculated. She thought about the way Varro looked at a problem, the way he looked at her napkin with the metadata, and at the cell on her spreadsheet, and at the shell company chain, like a man who understood that numbers were not decoration. Like a man who would not bury the math. "I have conditions," she said. "Tell me, I work my own hours. I don't answer to Renner unless it's a safety issue, in which case I'll defer on the safety and negotiate on everything else. I want access to the full Northgate file chain, not just what's relevant to you. I started that audit, and I'm finishing it, and I want it in writing. Not a handshake, not a verbal agreement, a document with your actual name on it." Varro was quiet for a moment. "My actual name," he said, "is not something I put on documents. Then find a version of it you're comfortable with and sign that," Ivy said. "But I'm not working informally. I've done informal. I know what informal costs." He looked at her for a long time. The morning light was doing something to the room, making it softer, less like a statement, and more like a place. She noticed he'd made coffee for two without being asked. "Varro Kessler," he said. "Is that real enough to sign?" "All right," Ivy said. "Varro Kessler. I can work with that." The document took 2 hours, which she drafted herself because she trusted her own phrasing. He read every clause. He changed 3 words in the compensation section, and she changed them back, and he let her. He signed with a pen that was not expensive but was particular. Worn smooth on one side in a way that meant he actually used it, which told her something. Renner delivered the signed copy without comment, which Ivy interpreted as acceptance. The Northgate chain took 6 weeks to fully map. It was not clean work. It was the kind of work that required following money the way you follow water. Not where it should go, but where it actually went, which is always messier and more interesting. She did it from the office they gave her, which had windows. She noted this. She didn't say anything about it. Varro came in most mornings. Not to check on her. She understood that early. He came in because the work was happening there, and he was the kind of person who needed to be near the work. He would stand at her shoulder and look at the screen and ask questions that were specific and not stupid, which was rarer than it should have been. He didn't talk about himself. She didn't ask, mostly, because she was learning that the thing about Varro was that he didn't give you information he didn't think was relevant, and if she wanted to know something, she had to make a case for its relevance. She found this annoying and oddly respectful. He found out about the Harmon Group settlement on a Thursday. She'd filed the documentation through a contact she'd made 3 years ago at a compliance firm, and it had moved faster than she expected. The call came in at 6 in the morning, and she was already at her desk. She told Varro when he came in at 8. He read the terms she'd negotiated, set the paper down. "You did this on your own," he said. "It was my audit. While you were mapping the Northgate chain, I'm good at parallel work," Ivy said. "The office has windows. It helps." He looked at her. "I didn't know you'd noticed." "I notice everything," she said. "I just don't say most of it out loud. Something happened in the space between them. Not sudden, not dramatic. The way pressure changes before a weather shift, gradual, and then all at once present. The windows," he said, "were Renner's suggestion." "I know," Ivy said. "She mentioned it. I think she was trying to tell me something." "What did you think she was trying to tell you?" Ivy looked at the city through the glass. The morning coming in at a low angle, making the buildings look like they were made of something warmer than they were. "I think she was telling me you pay attention to things you don't comment on," Ivy said. "Which means we're the same in that way. Which means we're either going to be very good at working together or absolutely insufferable." He almost smiled. It was becoming a thing she'd learned to track, the near misses, the recalibrations, the things his face almost did. "The name you gave me," he said. "The beneficial owner. We moved on it yesterday." "I know," Ivy said. "Renner told me. You didn't ask what happened." "Not my department," Ivy said. "I find the chain. What happens at the end of the chain is yours." She paused. "As long as what happens doesn't require me to change the numbers, I would never ask you to change the numbers," Varro said. She believed him. That was the thing she hadn't expected, that she would believe him. Not because he was kind particularly, or warm, or safe in the way people usually meant when they said safe, but because the math he did was honest math. Because when she showed him a discrepancy, he didn't ask her to make it go away. He asked her what it meant. She had not had that before. She hadn't known she was looking for it. "There's another chain," she said. "I found it while I was mapping Northgate. Subsidiary of the same beneficial owner. Different province, different structure, but the same fingerprint. The same sloppy timestamp gap. It's bigger. How much bigger?" "Much," Ivy said. He pulled a chair to her desk and sat down, not behind her, beside her. "Show me," he said. She showed him. The Northgate file went on record under her name on a Friday, which she noted without ceremony. The compliance firm sent a confirmation. She printed it, put it in a folder, put the folder in the bottom of her bag. Not because she needed to see it every day. Just because it was hers and she wanted to know where it was. That evening, Varro found her in the kitchen. The one that had become, without discussion, the place they ended up when the workday ended, but neither of them had quite left. He poured 2 glasses of something that was not rye, and set one in front of her, and sat down across the table. "You could have gone anywhere," he said. "After the Harmon Group, you had the settlement. You had references now. You had options." Ivy looked at her glass. "I know. Why are you still here?" She thought about the first night. The bar and the phone and the napkin, and the way he'd pushed the phone 1 centimeter toward her without quite asking. The way she'd answered without quite being asked. "The chain isn't finished," she said. "The Northgate chain is closed. The subsidiary isn't. Is that all?" She looked up. He was watching her with the same expression he'd had the first night, interested in the way a problem is interesting, but something else underneath it now. Something she didn't have a clean label for. "No," she said, "but I'm not going to tell you the rest while I can still claim I'm here for the subsidiary." Something happened to his face, not the almost smile. Something quieter. "Fair," he said. She picked up her glass. "Varro," she said. "Ivy, the subsidiary file is going to take months. I know. You're going to have to put up with me for months." "I'm aware," he said. She looked at the city through the window, the one that had windows, this room, all the rooms in this building, because apparently that was the kind of thing he paid attention to without commenting on. The lights coming on as the dark came down, the city doing what cities do, endlessly, indifferent and humming. "The timestamps don't lie," she said. "No." Varro agreed. "I've been here 6 weeks and you haven't once asked me to make the numbers say something they don't." "I won't," he said. "I know," Ivy said. "And the thing was, she did. The way you know a structural fact, weight-bearing, irreversible." She stayed. Not because she had nowhere to go. She had somewhere to go. She had options, and she had a settlement, and she had her name on a file that was on record, and she had, finally, references. She stayed because the chain wasn't finished, because the office had windows, because he made coffee for 2 without being asked, because the math for the first time in 11 months was hers.